Oh man.
Live. Awesome.
All right, we are live.
Woo!
Hi guys.
Hello.
Except I realized that they can't see us yet because I didn't put the embed in the page. So keep on playing that music, and we're just gonna Dan's gonna play us in for a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, embedding.
The technical difficulty song?
Yeah, love it. You guys get to watch a live embed. How does that feel?
Feel honored. This is
good. So glad this is being recorded.
We are being embodied.
What do you say?
We are being embodied. Past tense.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're being embodied.
I like to keep it casual here at Wistia.
Doing great.
Doing great.
At least you got.
Thanks, guys. All right, let's see about that.
Adam, turn your sound up.
And there it is.
Yay.
Can you guys see it?
Refreshing.
All right.
Yeah.
Yay!
Here we are.
Woo! Here we go. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we are so excited to have a very special musically themed AMA today.
Oh.
Exactly. We have, without further ado, Mr. Dan Mills. I hold him in the palm of my hand. Yeah, round of applause.
So awesome.
And we have on the left, we have Mark.
Mark Adele.
Mark Adele. And on the right, Mr. Adam Pod.
You whooped him?
These are the musicians behind the new tracks in the Wistia music collection. Go to wistia.com/music to see some of those. And you guys have already added a bunch of awesome questions, so we're gonna pretty much get right to it. I don't know if you three have anything that you want to say beforehand, but I'm gonna.
Dan Mills, real excited to be here. That's all.
For all time.
All I got.
All right. Let us start with we're gonna do a softball one first, and that is gonna start with from our own Meryl. What's the last concert or show you attended? If you were going to produce more sweet background music, what would you do differently the second time around?
Ooh. All right, Mark, you go first. What was your last show you went to?
Last show I went to was I was up in Western Mass on Saturday, and I went to see the Boston Symphony Orchestra do a rehearsal. But right before that, I was here in the city, and I saw a singer-songwriter named Margaret Glaspie that you should definitely check out. She's really good.
Adam?
Last thing I saw was a musical as part of the New York Music Theater Festival. It was like a new musical that somebody wrote and put up in a little theater.
What was the name?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
You saw the musical you were working on for the last.
And I've been playing for a musical in the same festival, but as an audience member, it was one that I didn't like that I can't remember the name of. So.
I saw Billy Woodward live at Rockwood Music Hall in New York City, and Billy was the one who actually did the artwork for the Sidecar Sessions, the cover of one of the free music things. I saw him play like a midnight set, and it was really good. What was the other part of the question? What would we do differently?
Yeah, if you were going to produce more sweet background music, what would you do differently the second time around?
I know for me, and I don't know what you guys would say, but if we were to do that again, because this was a setting where we actually went to a studio and did it with a lot of organic instruments, but neither me, Mark, or Adam play the drums. So we kind of like layered a lot of drums by like hitting them and occasionally use loops and stuff. I think next time it would be really fun to have a drummer come in for the entirety.
Or a little bit more of a rhythmic perspective. I would agree. I think, yeah. I think that. Trying to think of anything else that, but it's kind of, like we all have kind of like standard processes. Like obviously there are things that work and don't work throughout that writing process and recording process. But, you just kind of like hash stuff out, and there's kind of a schedule that we follow as we work on that stuff and kind of stick to that. So I don't know. I think stuff just sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work, and you kind of, every project's different.
Yeah.
Cool. Speaking of how you get things to work and not work, what do you guys do? What's your preferred method of actually composing and arranging? Do you come up with ideas separately and bring them to sessions, or is it just kind of open improv? This question is from Lauren.
I think, well, I'll jump in for the stuff I've done for Wistia. A lot of times I like to, if I'm doing something for a specific video, I'll pull the video up on one window on my computer. I usually like to do it with 2 monitors, and I'll have the video up here. And I like to start with just like the tempo and the rhythm. And I usually like look through drum machines and then find a groove and a tempo that feels good for it. And then I start composing from there. But I like to build it in that regard, rhythm up. But that's like for a Wistia video. I'm sure you guys have something different for other projects as well.
Yeah, I saw that question and I was thinking, I know a bunch of composers and people who do I think it said something about like sort of open-ended improv until something good happens. I think it's some of the wording they use. And I know some people that do that. They sort of like loop some section of their, their multi-layered composition that they're working on, and they like keep trying stuff until they feel like that last thing I tried was good. Like, I'll keep that. And that's not usually my approach to it, although like I think if you're coming from a less classically trained background, it's probably a really good one, because there's definitely a lot of power in having like in improvisation and having to like go like whether or not you're ready to, like you will come up with something, and sometimes that something is good and bad, and when the stakes are low and you have as many tries as you want, like I think it's a viable approach. I often will improvise in the early stages of composing something just to kind of get some sort of energy or pacing together. Like if I know I'm going to have to come up with something that's like sort of 2 minutes long-ish, I'll play off the top of my head improvising, and then I'll like use whatever I improvised as sort of a shape, but then like go and actually hone the specific melodies or chords or kind of the detail stuff. I might end up scrapping all the material I use, but it gives it some kind of organic shape that sort of felt good in one pass, rather than over-engineering every moment like consecutively, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would say for a lot of the experiences that I have, well, for the Wistia sessions that we did, for example, Dan kind of had some ideas like, that were kind of just floating around in his head that he would bring into our group. And so he'd just have maybe a little chord progression, or he might just walk over to a keyboard and like just play a little line or something like that. And then it kind of became a little improvisation on that, where, we just spitball stuff back and forth. I see that a lot with working on full records with bands and stuff. There might be one songwriter in the group that kind of writes the song, or at least the structure of the song, and writes melody, maybe lyrics, and then brings that to a band or to the rest of their band, and everybody kind of spitballs off of that and kind of gives their own influence. I think it's different for every artist or project, but that's I think for this stuff specifically.
Yeah, and I think as soon as you can let the people who are playing the instruments or experts at those instruments start to take control over the parts for those specific instruments. Like if you have a drummer, as soon as like the drummer gets the general idea you're going for, then like if you can let the drummer be the drummer,
totally,
a better outcome than like if you try to micromanage everybody's individual thing. So
that's a great answer. Boo to micromanaging. Okay, we're gonna take a turn and go kind of video specific right now. Madeline, sup Maddie? Is asking, what's the best way to cut a song that you want to use in a video when it's too long or too short, so there are no unnatural cuts or loops? I am terrible at this, so I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
So Levine would be the best person to talk about this, because he's done it way more than I have. And when I'm in the picture, we're custom composing everything. But I would say his answer would be that you definitely want the ending to end when the video ends. And the beginning to, depending on where you want to start there. So I think he basically starts the song and probably splits it somewhere very random and moves the ending to time up with the ending. And then it's all about finding a section that's repeatable. Like usually it can be like a verse section, or maybe it's, you kind of want to stay in phrases. Like if the phrase is 4 bars, you don't want to necessarily throw on like an extra half measure unless you can sneak it. But the biggest thing you got to do is when you're splicing it together is having it be on a downbeat. So if it's like dun 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 dun, you don't want it to suddenly be like dun 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 and like skip a beat. That's the biggest thing that you want to worry about is the endings and being on the beat. How'd I do?
I didn't hear it. I'm sure it was great. I was running across the audience.
Don't listen to
You
him.
did a great job.
Yeah, I'm sure I
Good
got
job.
I'm sure that
it.
answers your question.
Yeah,
exactly.
perfect.
On the beat, ending at the end.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
All right, come on.
Put some shoes on. Okay, next question.
Okay, next question is from Nikki. She wants to know what your favorite software instrument libraries are for samples, loops, what have you, if you have any. I know that you're real instrument people.
Oh. Mark, you got anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah.
You know what me and Adam are going to say, but go ahead.
Yeah. Drum sample wise, if you Google Paul Mabry, I think he's out of Nashville. He makes some really cool drum sounds that aren't just like, oh, here's a snare, here's a kick. He'll do like those sounds, but in cool different rooms or with different effects on them and stuff. So that's really fun to add into different songs.
Adam and I both, like, I think even a while ago, and now Pro Tools and other programs have caught up, but a while ago, I want to say like 8 years ago, Logic had the best like library that would come out of the gate, and they still have a really amazing library of samples as well as like really good instruments that you can mess with, and they're making it easier and easier. But I know Adam uses it, and I use it. Mark does as well. We use Logic a lot, and also as we continue to record with each other, if we get a really good snare sample or a good kick sample, we like remember, oh, that was a really good sound, and we'll make the sample. And I know me and Mark have a shared Dropbox folder of cool samples that we throw back and forth. And I hope by the time we're like 75, we have this amazing collection of audio samples, and then everything's changed and we can't use them.
Yeah.
I use, as Dan said, I use like the whole gamut of Logic stock stuff, which a lot of it's great. You'll also find a lot of the stuff in there that's like almost completely useless. But in addition to that, as a pianist, I don't often have the means to record real piano, and I use a program called Ivory for basically software piano that I want it to be a level up from the regular Logic stuff. So there's a great program called Ivory. There are others as well, but that's what I use for all my fake piano sounds.
Cool. I'll add one more thing. I don't know. I don't own it, but I have some friends that use it a lot. But in Native Instruments makes a lot of awesome software synths and stuff like that. And they have, if you're looking for kind of like making trailers and teasers and stuff like that, they actually have like a thematic sound bank where it's just kind of like huge, like booms and crashes and weird sounds.
Like full cues.
Yeah, that will really help.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Okay, so we have a popular question from Peter Erickson here that a lot of other people upvoted. Now, this is really sort of like a budget question from the video producer's perspective. So give it a whirl. He's basically asking how repeatable the relationship that you guys have with Wistia is from a cost standpoint, from like Wistia's perspective, I guess, compared to buying licenses for tracks one by one on one of the major stock sites. That and like, he's kind of asking if he should go for one of the stock sites or try to build a relationship with local musicians, and what your thoughts are on that.
So just to give you like a really quick history, I've been doing the music here at Wistia for a long time and just been working for them directly. That relationship began because Chris and I, before he was even here, were doing a similar thing when he was freelancing. Chris Levine's one of the video people here. And this project is very unique. It's more to get, into a studio, get some more tracks and get some really good sounding stuff for all, for you guys to use basically. And so looping in Adam and Mark and me all working in a legit recording studio for a week to make 5 tracks, there's obviously more expenses in that. There's 3 people working. We took the mixing and mastering to a more like professional level, and obviously have to rent the studio. So that's more expensive than just working with one composer arranger. Depending on the project and depending on the workflow, you might be able to find a license you want like really easily in the price range you want to spend. But if you do end up finding like a musician that's local to you, there's like the software available and the hardware available to musicians now is incredible. So there's so many people around you if they're in music that have all these little demo setups. And that's where I started. Like if you were to hear the first 2 tracks that I made for Levine, they were horrible. They were like way in the way. They were just not good. But I think licensing can be really great depending on how many videos you're using. But if you're thinking really long term and a specific brand of music, because Wistia's music all kind of sounds in a similar realm, it might be worth trying to like poke around in the music scene or try to find some composers around. And Adam and Mark have done tons of freelance composing stuff too. So it really depends on how many videos you want to make and how much money you want to spend. But obviously, it's more expensive when there's more people and more professional facilities and gear involved.
I'll also piggyback on that to sort of address another question that I feel like is related that I saw on the list. Somebody asked, what were they asking? Something about how can you ensure that, like, if you do strike up a relationship with a musician, like, how do you know, like, how can you basically vet somebody to make sure you're going to get, like, a good quality thing? And just speaking from the perspective of the freelance musician who is getting, inquiries and trying to establish relationships with people, it's not at all unprofessional or weird to ask a musician for samples of their work, or even to give sort of a quality control thing without actually getting a full product for them. If it's somebody who hasn't done a lot of it before, but you do want to try them out and they think that they would be good for it, don't be afraid to ask them for, like, well, can you just get me, 15 seconds of sound just so I can sort of see what your mixing capabilities are and like what your product is going to sound like ultimately before I hire you to make 5 tracks for me. That person, especially if you have at least a little bit of a volume of potential work for them, should be thrilled to provide you with some kind of sample of their stuff. And then you can say, great, this is not exactly what I'm looking for. Could you try something more like X, Y, Z? Or you can, say, hopefully you lucked out and everything's great and you can move forward with them. But that way you're not putting a bunch of money up front and then you should have bought the license to start with.
That's what Adam just spoke of is kind of a good point where if you're working with a writer or an artist, you might have a little bit more flexibility on getting your own custom music. If you just get a license, and you say, oh, this might do, you're just kind of picking a song and then you chop it up, edit it up, and make sure that it fits the video. But if you're looking for something, kind of what Dan was saying, looking for a specific branding, or something that just might be a little bit more with what you're trying to put into the video, having that interaction with the artist as they're in the writing phases will be a beneficial point.
Awesome. Now on to a potentially fun storytime question. Emmanuel is asking about your most interesting failed music project. Kind of open-ended. Yeah, I can't wait to hear this one.
We should do it. I think we should think of it as together. What is with the 3 of us involved, what our biggest failure has been?
I think it was going to the beach in Rhode Island before we played a show. And
That is true. We had a gig in Southern Rhode Island. And we spent the whole day at the beach just getting like as red as possible and like playing like children for 10 hours. And we were the worst band in the world that night. I'm trying to think of like, no, what
shutting down, like, oh no.
So that should be really helpful to whoever asked that question.
Don't go to
that's really helpful. Is there anything from like that we've recorded that was just like crap for? I mean, yes, but like obviously not just like old high school stuff. Like a lot, I don't know. It's tough to talk about because a lot of it is you learn, like you go through it. And I think that the 3 of us and what's been really special about our relationship together as musicians is that we've always had no egos about that journey. So I think that like, I guess I'd say everything in a way feels like a failure and like it has to, or you won't keep pushing forward. Because like, oh, we could have done that better. We could have done that better. I'm still trying. Oh, I know what it is. I'm sorry. It was when we recorded This Town in the wrong key at a wrong tempo.
Oh, yeah.
And then Mark left town and he was the one who was recording it. And me and Adam like snuck into the studio and re-recorded the whole thing up a whole step as if he wouldn't notice, which obviously created a lot more work for him. And he got back and just like, what are you guys doing?
Oh my gosh.
I'll get a little heady for a second as to answering that question. And I think, if you'll pardon the sort of roundabout answer, I think the biggest sort of failure that's always ongoing is all the stuff that we haven't done for stupid reasons, basically, waiting for the perfect guy to come in to do such and such, and then you don't end up doing it at all. And that whole and I know Wistia is very much of the mindset of like, get it done with what you have. Like, it's better than not getting it done. And we definitely suffer from that, and probably have more in the past than we do now, and we're learning from it. But I think most of our failures are just non-projects because we waited too long for something to happen, and then by the time
hot, ladies and gentlemen,
by the time you're ready, you're moved on to a new song, or you have a new thing you'd rather be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Amen, brother.
All right, this next one comes from Stephanie. I feel like I'm doing a radio show right now.
No, I love this.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thank you, Stephanie. She says, hi, guys. How do you approach taking the viewer on an emotional journey with just about 30 seconds or less of time musically? Do you vary the pace of the track or add crescendos? What are some what are some pro tips and tricks for scoring very short pieces?
I mean, there's a lot of little tricks depending on the track. You know, I think a lot about the pacing of the track. Definitely not changing a tempo too often is something that I work with, but the pacing, the register in which the instruments are, and how many of them there will be. So obviously, if you start off with something like really light, it's like Nina, Nina, Nina. I'm trying to think of your track that you did, Adam, for that Knowledge Providence thing. And it like starts to get like a little like more notes, and the notes get more subdivided and more instruments, and it's sort of like, it not only crescendos in the sense that it's getting louder, it's crescendoing because the rhythms are getting more subdivided and the instruments are now like gathering and becoming a big layer, and then suddenly it tucks away for a second and then kablam, and then it's like the big ending.
Right, I agree. You can do more with dropouts and instrumentation effectively than like trying to change, like having a slow section and a fast section. Like, I think that's a bad idea, is, as Dan said, it's like changing tempos is disorienting, but adding and removing instruments gives something shape that is sort of less like, I don't know, it's not as jostling, and you can get behind it. And it's when it's sudden, it's not as harsh either. If you listen to film scores, it's a lot of that in a big moment, a dropout, and it comes back in, but like the underlying pulse often stays the same, and it just like lets your heartbeat stay the same while you're listening, and you just get sort of, taken up and down in dynamics more than tempos. I think is a good strategy.
Cool. This next one is a question that I invented to answer a few different questions that are on here. Will each of you answer if you were going on a very musical desert island and you could only bring 3 pieces of recording gear for you, and it was like kind of a weird island where you had to record music? What would you bring?
Island, I want to go there.
I would bring, wait, it can be anything?
Sure.
But recording gear.
Okay, recording gear and 1 instrument.
Okay. I mean, hold on. I'm not to be a pain. Am I going to say like, what's the best dream gear that if I had $1 million bajillion I would buy?
You're the worst.
Stuff that I need.
Sure.
Stuff that I
just
need.
Basic. No, not dream gear, but like scrappy, basic
gear.
stuff that these people can afford.
Yeah. I would bring a laptop is the #1 thing I'd want.
Yeah.
Number 2 would be like a way to communicate instruments to the laptop, which is like an interface. So I would bring my Apogee Duet, which is 2-channel, but if it's an island, I'd probably get the Quartet because there's more channels. And why not? There's no budget on the island.
Is there power on the island? Do we have power on the island?
We do have power.
Generator.
A generator. No, I'm bringing a Quartet. I'm bringing a laptop, and if I don't have to worry about I need a microphone and I need speakers. I can't do 3.
That's fine.
Done
That's fine.
before.
That's okay.
That's it though.
Recording rate.
Some universal condenser microphone.
Yeah.
Which
and a laptop
microphone?
and speakers.
Which microphone? The
I'll let
people want
Mark answer that.
specifics.
He's
Okay.
gonna be a better microphone guy.
I mean, yeah, there's a ton of different options, and like, I would always say like a great all-around microphone was an AKG 414. You get a lot of quality out of that microphone. But like if you're just laying down demos and stuff like that, I mean, the options are endless. Anything AKG makes, anything this company called Mojave makes, they do great stuff.
The Shure KSM 27.
Yeah, it like Shure makes great products as well. So it's
Crappy mic that got me through like 8 years.
Yeah. Any of that stuff. It's basically you just kind of figure out ways to work with what you have and figure out how you can get good sounds out of that stuff. So I would say kind of along the lines with Dan, a laptop, an interface. There's a bunch of options for those. A microphone. You'll need headphones or speakers, but you'll also need, whether the stuff, if you have instruments on the laptop, like software instruments, or, if you want to bring in a guitar or a keyboard or a piano or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot.
I'm totally in agreement. I have the AKG 414 Mark mentioned. I've had one microphone since I moved to New York 7 years ago. It's been that. It's gotten me through anything I needed as far as home demos go, and I feel like a New York City apartment is not so unlike this island where you can only fit 3 pieces of gear. So I have that microphone.
What a joke!
A MIDI controller.
Great.
And, the microphone can let you record some percussive, elements that sound more organic, and you add them in with your loops and stuff that are already in your laptop and get.
The funny thing I'm realizing right now is that the 3 of us sit and kind of do this all the time, and it's really weird, right? Right at this moment, I remember that like it really is just the 3 of us looking at each other, but there's everyone's listening, and we're talking about stuff that like isn't just our personal lives.
Welcome to the AMA day.
Yeah, that's really funny.
Hey, who's that?
Good talk. All right. Let's see. We have just a few minutes left. I think one question here is from Jamie. Hi, Jamie. How's it going? Jamie's struggling with fine-tuning the volume levels of background music compared to the volume of video. I know that we at Wistia have made a little bit of content about this, but in general, do you have any advice about this? She says that sometimes it sounds good in her headphones when she's filming, but then will sound totally different on laptop speakers. She just wants some rules of thumb if you got any.
Mark, you want to jump into the world of really basic like compression limiting stuff?
Well, yeah, there's a few options that you can do. You can always, one technique is to just automate the volume of your music bed as vocals and things come through. When somebody speaks, you duck the volume down of that track a little bit. When they finish speaking, you can bring it back up. You don't want to make it too drastic because then that feels a little discombobulated. Another thing that you can do is what Dan was talking about. If you use compression and limiting, I don't know what software you're using or anything like that, but you can kind of keep the dynamic range of both your music bed and your voiceover at a relative level, and they can you can kind of just mix them together and just find that perfect balance. Another thing you could do is a thing called side chaining, where if you set up a compressor, yeah, this can get a little technical, but if you set up a compressor on the music bed, on the music track that you're using, you can actually use those vocals, your voiceover, to work this compressor. So anytime the vocal kicks in, it knocks down the volume a little bit for the music bed and kind of keeps that evenness throughout the whole thing.
And you can look up on the internet side chaining and fall down quite the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Also, I remember that question. The person said that they end up sort of defaulting to making the music too quiet so that they make sure you understand the words. And I think that that's a really smart idea. If you're in one, like trying to err on one side or the other, it's a lot more forgiving to have background music be too quiet than too loud. So it seems like they're using the right instincts to begin with. So
another good thing, Dan, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but just the instrumental range and kind of tonality of instruments that you use. You want to make space for the human voice or robot voice or whatever you're using. Welcome to Wistia. But yeah, that's a very important factor as well. You don't want, I think somebody had posted a question of, should we use music that has vocals in the background track kind of thing? That tends to get a little discombobulated as well. They start to interfere with.
Yeah, general rule, if someone's talking, I would not use vocals, but if it's like a video of like how great your vacation was, a lyricless video could be kind of boring.
And and then again, that's all kind of editing. Like if you want to use something with vocals, music with vocals, you can save those parts for when your voiceover isn't speaking.
Yeah.
And that kind of can tie things together and make a good little production.
Cool. Okay, I think we have time for one more question, which is a kind of compound question. Nick wants to hear about the process of making the Wistia Fest speaker intro videos and the tracks behind that.
That's a great one. So last year was just me and Chris. This year it was actually me, Adam, Chris Levine, and Billy was there. The process was basically, we like to hit different genres. So the first thing we did was like a major brainstorm session around the different genres of music that we'd be able to pull off. Some of which, like, I don't know if anyone saw the Brendan Schwartz one. I remember when Adam brought it up and I was like, we can't pull that off. And then he pulled it off like unbelievably. But we first started there, like, what are some fun genres? I think, we thought of like the sort of, like English rock tune, and there's a rap in there. But first we went down genres, and then we started just playing around with the people's names, because those are like the biggest pieces of the song is obviously each speaker's name. We started like singing them in different ways and seeing if they fit into different genres. And then once they were like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to do this for Ann Hanley, then we went down that route. What's going on? And so once we locked down the different genres and the different people's names, then we just went through and Adam and I composed all these songs together, and with help with Chris and working on lyrics and making sure that everything like had the content that we wanted there. And then from there, we sort of split up the responsibilities, where it was like, okay, I'm going to build the music bed for the rap song. Oh man, that's a horrible photo. That's a leak. I'm going to build the music for the rap song, and I'm going to do the guitar track for the Phil Nottingham song. Adam's going to get cracking on a demo for the Brendan Schwartz song, basically getting them all to a level where they were timed out and long enough so that the video guys could now use a version that they could lock it into. So if it was like 35 seconds long, we needed to get there quicker than having the finished product. So Adam and I split up the responsibilities of making the like rough beds, and then they started editing the videos together, and we continued to grow the tracks on top of that. And obviously, I left out that the brainstorm session is like 2 days of the weirdest things you could imagine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that from Adam, or?
Yeah, with the challenge, and probably also the kind of a blessing in disguise of those things, where they were so short songs. And so, like Dan said, we went for the names first and sort of found what the hook was going to be for each person. Once you have the hook in place for a 20-second song, like there's not a lot else that you have to like. It was sort of easy to go like genre, hook, and then like fill in those gaps and then get the timing right. So yeah, I think emphasizing the fact that you need that little hook to be in place before you can conceptualize the rest of it is probably where the success lies, in that, if there was indeed success.
Hit squad.
Awesome. Well, I think that is, I'm just like scooting in here. I think that's pretty much a half hour. Before we wrap up, do you guys have any like last words of wisdom for people looking to do music for their videos, or just music for themselves?
I think the two things out of like the questions I saw that I would like to say is, a lot of people asked about the prices of licensing. And I think it's not to get on my pedestal as a musician, but I think like now is a really difficult time for people to like grapple like paying for music when you can spend $10 a month and have everything you ever want. But I do think that like anything else, not to like reiterate this point, like you will get what you pay for. And I think that a lot of people ask like, this is expensive at this price. It kind of like is what it is, and it's in the place that it is, I think, for good reason. That being said, there are so many musicians, because of the same thing, out there working really hard and looking for opportunities for work that can be fulfilling to them, and also, bring them a little scratch. And I think it is worth the time, if it's something you're remotely interested in checking out your local music scene and getting a vibe on, is this person self-producing a lot of material, if you can tell that, or finding a music friend who could help you do it, and maybe getting in touch with someone who might be interested. And it could fail, but the relationship for Chris and I, and I know that Adam and Mark would say the same things for people they've dealt with, it's really a great one, because music brings so much to the table with video. And if you can if you can find that musician where you live, it's worth the hunt for sure. And in worst case scenario, what, you go see a good show? Hey, not so bad.
That works.
Yeah.
Any last words of wisdom from you guys?
I would say, yeah, like as you're working on any of this stuff, just ask questions of people, whether you're trying to find music for your project, or whether you're trying to write music for your project, or whether you're trying to record music. Like, don't be afraid to ask questions of, maybe somebody that that also writes music, or, it's always good to have kind of a brainstorm for whether you're putting the audio to video, or, hey, do you think that this kind of transition works well with this video edit, or should it stop right here? Just getting opinions of other people and just having that workflow, it really helps kind of get a better quality product, because you're not just in your head about like if this is going to work or not.
I agree, and I think people are often more musical than they either realize or comfortable bringing into bringing to their own company if they're not the music person. And a lot of this new software is getting better at extracting that from you. Like, if you have some musical instincts and you are able to piece your own like loops and stuff together, like if that's where you're at budget-wise and stuff, I think that people can learn to sort of trust their own musicality when that's all they have sort of as an option. And the more you want to like take it to a higher level, you start to use less and less stock templated loopy stuff and add more sort of genuine creative musical elements. And I think that can be kind of a good sort of path, especially depending on what your budget needs and personnel are, to go from sort of more stock to like all original. And there's a lot of room in between. So yeah.
That's great advice. That's really inspiring. Maybe we will have a DIY music guide at some point. We'll see. I know Robbie, like a lot of people around the Wistia office also play guitar, play a lot of instruments. I never really thought about it like that before, Adam, but that's a really good point.
If it makes everyone feel better, at one point in time, we all really sucked at music. I can very confidently say that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone in the Wistia community who asked questions. I know that we'll be in there later answering a lot of these just in the comments, because we were only able to get to so many of them. But this will be recorded and embedded in the post after the fact. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.